Today's story is the story of the Exodus, that exit from Egypt and the resulting 40-year journey. Now, this story is one of the very most important stories in the Jewish tradition. It's the story about how God liberates, how God loves people and brings them out and gives them meaning and purpose in their lives. And so this story begins with that 10th plague, the angel of death. God said, I'm going to send an angel of death into Egypt, and the firstborn of every household will die. But God promised that God would spare any household where they took the blood of a young lamb and spread it on the doorposts and on the lintel of their doors. They were to eat that lamb then, but they were to do it quickly, with their bags packed, with their shoes on. They're supposed to be ready to go. Don't even wait for the bread to rise, because God is acting, and pretty soon it's going to be time to move. And what God said was going to happen is exactly what happened. There was weeping and wailing throughout Egypt as the firstborn of every household, human and livestock alike, even Pharaoh's household. There was death. Pharaoh was at his wit's end. Pharaoh had been worn down by the Hebrews, worn down by God. And so Pharaoh said, go. I can't put up with you and your God anymore. Go out into the wilderness and worship your God. And let's move on. So after 430 years in Egypt, the descendants of Israel, of Jacob, left Egypt. And they left quickly. And as they went, a pillar of cloud rose up, and God led them in that cloud forward into the wilderness. And at night, that pillar of cloud turned to a pillar of fire to give them light so they could travel day and night, so they could move quickly. When it became clear that they weren't just going out there to worship God, that they weren't coming back at all, Pharaoh got angry. Pharaoh gathered his army. Pharaoh jumped into his chariot, and they chased down the Israelites and pinned them at the Red Sea. The people freaked out, and they complained to Moses, and Moses complained to God, what am I supposed to do with these people? Why did you bring us out here to die? And God says, oh, but I didn't. Stretch out your hands and part the sea. And so Moses did as God said, and it worked. The sea parted. In the middle there was dry land, and the people could walk across to take their carts across, and they escaped. And while they were escaping, that pillar of cloud that God was inhabiting moved behind them and protected them, keeping Pharaoh's army at bay. When they were about safely on the other side, that pillar moved, and Pharaoh's army charged after them until Moses closed his arms again, and the sides of the sea fell and swallowed up the army of Egypt. Now the people witnessed this and sung God's praises. They were so thankful. Their God was so amazing and wonderful. They were so grateful until they got thirsty. Out in that desert, they got thirsty, and they moaned and they complained. They complained to Moses, and Moses took it to God, complaining to God, what am I to do with these people? And God yet again told him what to do. So Moses took his staff and struck a rock, and water gushed out to sustain the people. They praised God. They thanked God. God was the most wonderful liberator of all, until they got hungry. And then they complained to Moses, if only we were still back in Egypt where it was better than it was here. Moses complained to God, and God yet again worked. God did a miracle. God made this fine, flaky substance rain down from heaven. It appeared in the morning like dew. And people could collect this stuff. They didn't even know what to call it, so they called it manna, which in Hebrew means, what is it? Each and every day, God sustained them, rained down bread from heaven in the desert. And they're so thankful. They were so grateful. God was so wonderful. They sung God's praises. until they got tired of manna, always eating manna. They wanted meat, and they complained to Moses, and Moses complained to God, and God was getting pretty annoyed by this point by the people. And so God took care of them. God provided them meat. God made quail come out, one quail coming from behind a tent, and then another, and then a whole flock coming down. But God was getting kind of fed up. And so God made quail come out of their noses. There was so much quail. Now, as God led them on their journey, God didn't take them the short route. That short route would have taken them through the land of the Philistines, and God knew the people. God knew that they would get afraid and they would turn back to Egypt. And so God took them a longer route for their own good, because God knew that that's the only way they would get to go where they were needed to go. And it took decades. It took decades for them to learn how to live together. It took decades for them to learn that they could trust God. But the journey was worth it. There are a whole lot of little stories that happen on this journey of 40 years. And in fact, there's one more big story that I'd like to share with you. That story that you probably noticed was missing, of the golden calf and the 10 Commandments. So I'll share that one with you tomorrow.